I know you're going to say you want more, but just in isolation, you'd have to welcome this step.
It's just a promise not to cheat. I mean, you shouldn't get a pat on the back for promising not to cheat. If you win the first match of the Test series by 200 runs, you don't get to carry that over into the second match. The second match starts anew. That's why the rest of the world said these fictional carryover credits don't exist. So all he's promising to do is not cook the books. He's expecting the rest of the world to applaud him, and instead they're saying that is not enough. And that's why even though he's said to Parliament he is going to the Climate Ambition Summit, he's not been guaranteed a space there because you only get to go there if you're promising to do more. He's not promising to do more, he's just promising not to cheat.
Well, we'll see what position he gets otherwise or not at that summit. But on calling out Australia, what about other countries? New Zealand's commitment for 2030, 30%. They needed carryover to meet Kyoto, which it still looks like they'll miss. Australia's hardly alone here.
Well, we're here in Australia. Australia is the third largest exporter of fossil fuel pollution in the world. We have an enormous responsibility as a big, advanced and wealthy country to do our bit so that others then can see that we're doing our bit and so they should do the same. And instead we've been a laggard, right? And what the report out from the UN today confirms and what the government's projection figures out today confirm is that we are not on track to stop dangerous global warming. And they've said countries like Australia would need to do at least 3 times as much as they're doing to be consistent with the Paris Agreement. So that's the level of ambition that the government needs to be looking at. I don't think we should be comparing ourselves with other countries and saying, oh, maybe there are some other countries that aren't as good. We've got to do 3 times as much as what we're doing to have any chance of stopping dangerous climate change. That's what the government needs to go to the summit this weekend.
I mean, 3 times as much on our current commitments, if you take that very sort of broad figure, would be, what, 80-something%, high 70s by 2030.
Well, the UK has just committed to doing 68% by 2030.
On a different basis, though, on 1990 levels.
Yeah, I don't know that changes the figures too much. If you want to have a look at those figures, I don't know if it changes it too much. Well, it does, because if you go for their 2005 figures, their emissions are already down by then. So it's a different, it matters where the starting point is. Well, the question is whether we want to stop runaway climate change or not, right? You can't negotiate with the science. The science is the science. And that's why John Kerry, Joe Biden's new climate envoy, has said the existing Paris commitments are not enough to stop dangerous climate change. And that's a very significant statement from the incoming US President's representative. They've made it clear that we need to do more. That's why in that summit that he'll hold in the first 3 months, they're going to demand everyone come with pledges to do more. Because at the moment, and this is what the UN report confirms today, we are not on track to stop it. And I think we just need to remind ourselves why we're doing this, because if you go over the cliff, there's no coming back. And we're talking about during the lifetime of today's primary school students, Australia warming by 3 to 4 degrees and losing the ability to feed ourselves, large parts of the country becoming uninhabitable during the lifetime of today's primary school students.
A couple of other issues to get through. The Brereton inquiry into alleged war crimes in Afghanistan by Australian troops. It's been an interesting week or so. Former personnel, some within the SAS as well, really pushing back at a couple of things. First of all, they're worried the presumption of innocence might have gone, and also that this meritorious citation given out might be taken away from about 3,000 soldiers, the vast majority of whom have done nothing wrong. What do you make of this criticism?
Well, with respect to the citations, I mean, one of the things to note about those citations is that they're given as a group, so it's not given to individuals, so it's given as a group, and so that does mean that those citations are at risk if there are war crimes that are proved, as has been found by the Brereton report. But certainly the message that we're hearing...
Credible reports. I mean, not found by the Brereton report. These are credible reports.
They're very credible reports.
Sure.
They're very credible reports. And there's
not a final voice on it is the point, right?
Yes. Well, there's now further processes that will be going through with respect to criminal responsibility, but in terms of whether or not our forces behaved appropriately while overseas, I think the report gives a very clear answer to that. What we've been hearing, including from former serving personnel, is that their big concern is that there will be the case that a few people are potentially scapegoated, and that those higher up the chain, it'll be seen as a few bad apples rather than being something that command should take responsibility for. And that is a very serious question that needs to be investigated, and I'm worried...
Hasn't it been investigated? Because the report suggests that the people higher up didn't know about it.
Well, what we're hearing from many former people who've served there is that is just completely incredible. The suggestion that somehow that this is being set up, that somehow people further up the chain didn't know about this is not credible. Now,
but didn't this inquiry spend, 4 years? It got evidence from all ranks of the Special Forces, and that's what they have found.
Well, I think what we need to be satisfied of is that as the process is now continued, as there are prosecutions, but also as there are further investigations internally and the report is sought to be implemented within command, that is done in a way that everyone has confidence that some people aren't going to be just treated as scapegoats, that it will go as high up the chain as it needs to be. And at the moment, I think there's a very serious question.
Why is that?
That's certainly the way the Prime Minister is setting it up.
Why? What's he said, or what has he set up that it wouldn't get above a certain rank?
Well, in the last couple of... We've had motions being passed through the Senate and debates in the Senate where everyone is trying to make it crystal clear that, look, this is the actions of a few individuals and we shouldn't read anything into it systemically. And I think it's been very clear that that's the way that people are going. And that is a great concern to us, that this won't go as high up the chain as it needs to. And the second thing that is of grave concern to us is that this question of compensation to the victims and the families of the victims is not being addressed. We've moved in the Senate for the government to commit to compensating families of victims, and they are so far refusing that. Now, why? Like, if you take the Brereton report even at face value, then surely those victims are entitled to compensation. And the fact that the government is refusing to compensate those victims is deeply concerning.